What's going on, Cardinals fans? Time's been getting away from me this week, but I wanted to sit down and record some thoughts on Mike Shildt being named the manager of the San Diego Padres. Obviously, former manager of the Cardinals, fired after the 2021 season, ends up spending the last couple of years with the Padres in different capacities as an assistant, as an advisor, got into some on-field coaching roles due to various situations going on there in San Diego. And now Mike Shildt will take over as the field manager of the Padres. It's an interesting move and one that I think Cardinals fans aren't too surprised by. A lot of Cardinals fans in the era of Oli Marmol, after 2023 went the way that it did, disappointed with the fact that the Cardinals let Mike Shildt go, feeling that he was a quality manager that, for whatever reason, the Cardinals weren't satisfied by, and then they replaced him with somebody that I know that a lot of Cardinals fans believe isn't as good of a manager. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the path for Mike Shildt now will play out in San Diego, simultaneous to what Oli Marmol is looking to rebuild in St. Louis, as the Cardinals front office obviously needs to do its part in getting him the pieces that he needs for this St. Louis franchise to be successful once again. And then there's another managerial wrinkle still in the National League with Skip Schumaker as the Miami Marlins manager, winning National League Manager of the Year this season. So you have Skip Schumaker winning NL Manager of the Year, was the Cardinals bench coach under Oli Marmol. You have Mike Shildt winning NL Manager of the Year when he was with the Cardinals. Shildt getting that award in the National League in his first full season as the Cardinals manager in 2019. He actually got some votes for NL Manager of the Year as the interim in 2018 when he took over for Mike Matheny and nearly helped to guide the Cardinals to the postseason that year. But he was a winner in 2019, a winner in 2020, a winner in 2021. And I think the results speak for itself as to why Cardinals fans long for Mike Shildt. When you look at a 2023 team that did not perform, I think a lot of that gets pinned on the manager in the eyes of the fan base. And I know that people who listen to my content on BShafe Daily or here on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@BShafer12, know that I am a person that's in Oli Marmol's corner. I believe he's a good manager. I believe with the right pieces, he will be able to turn this Cardinals team around as the on-field leader of this clubhouse. But I also can understand a lot of people pining for Mike Shildt. I thought Mike Shildt was a very good manager as well. If you listened to my content back then, I disagreed with the idea that the Cardinals, over this vague notion of philosophical differences, would let Mike Shildt go when they did. But when they hired Oli Marmol, I said it's clear they have a vision in mind for what they want this role to look like. The problem for me in 2023 was that the Cardinals didn't back Oli Marmol with the roster necessary to have success. I'm not saying that Oli had a perfect season by any means, but I also think he was dealt a hand that simply wasn't a winning one. You could only bluff your way to so many wins with the roster the Cardinals had. And I didn't think the roster was going to be as bad as it ultimately was, but we said at the beginning of the season, if there was a way that it would go wrong, it would be on the pitching side, with John Mozeliak and his front office being too complacent in that regard. Now we're seeing what the steps are going to be for the Cardinals to fix that going into 2024. We've seen the Lance Lynn signing and the Kyle Gibson signing. I know Cardinals fans are still kind of up in arms about what that could mean for the entire picture of a starting rotation. My thought process is wait it out and see what else the team does. John Mozeliak in his press conference yesterday seemed to indicate that more moves would be on the way, whether that's another move similar to the guys they've already gotten or a true legitimate ace like Yamamoto, like Blake Snell, or even maybe a Sonny Gray that could help round this rotation into a little bit better form than what we see now. Well, that all remains to be seen, but I think it's an important distinction to make sure the front office does its part to allow for Oli Marmol to have an easier team to manage and more pieces to work with next year. With what he had to do from a pitching perspective and throwing different guys in the bullpen mix on a daily basis, and the innings that they got from some of those pitchers just were not of a quality level enough to get the Cardinals turned around. I think that was a factor in what cost them their first losing season since John Mozeliak took over as GM after the 2007 campaign. But like going back to the firing of Mike Shildt, remember, I disagreed with it at the time, but that doesn't mean that Oli Marmol isn't a capable manager. I just think the Cardinals are going to have to find the resources to help him in his role. But I think when things go well for any manager, the fan base is going to like that manager because he's winning games, right? Are there people out there that think Mike Matheny was a great manager because he won a lot of games? There probably are. I would say that Mike Matheny had a much better roster than what Oli Marmol was dealt in 2023, and it took a number of years for the quality of play to decline under Matheny. And it's not to say he was the worst manager in baseball history, but there are a lot of things about Mike Matheny on the inside that I didn't think were high quality with the managerial job he did at the time. When it comes to Oli, there are some characteristics that I think he can certainly learn from 2023 and improve upon. But I also think he's got the chops to be a great manager in St. Louis if he's provided with the resources necessary. But what's so interesting about that is, isn't that exactly what got Mike Shildt fired in the eyes of a lot of folks? We'll never get the entire story and the full details of it, but there were some concerns in terms of Mike Shildt maybe biting off a little more than he could chew, and some rumors about maybe he didn't want or see eye to eye with Jeff Albert remaining in the fold as the hitting coach. And in a power struggle, maybe Mike Shildt was on the losing end of that in a variety of discussions with the front office, right? On a variety of fronts, Mike Shildt perhaps pushed a little bit too hard in terms of what he wanted the coaching staff to look like, but maybe more than that, what he wanted the roster to look like and the pieces that he felt the front office should provide him. So it's very interesting to me that even though a lot of people make Oli Marmol to be the fall guy because, well, Shildt was a manager, things were good, he was the one pushing the front office to change. And again, we don't necessarily know exactly what all those changes he wanted were. We can speculate on them. I don't think it's all too important to get caught up in those details. But the overarching picture is what is interesting to me when you look at Mike Shildt now getting another opportunity with the Padres, a team that is going through a little bit of a crisis, honestly, with the ownership group, with Peter Seidler dying. Not necessarily unexpectedly, but he was only in his 60s. I think maybe internally folks might have known that he was sick or something. I don't really know the full scope of the details there. But you look at a team that under his ownership was certainly spending aggressively to try and attract the top talent and bring guys to San Diego to put a winning product on the field. They didn't have a great 2023 season either, similar to what the Cardinals went through, but it wasn't for a lack of trying and a lack of spending under that regime. So it's going to be interesting now with Mike Shildt having maybe the reins of a new ball club, but a ball club that does project to have a higher payroll. We'll see what they ask of A.J. Preller, the president of baseball operations out there, in terms of maybe trading away some of the salary. Like I said, it's a little bit of a sticky situation because when an owner passes away, it kind of is incumbent upon whatever comes next, which I believe his family is then kind of taking over, but I don't know the specific details of that. It could just have an impact on some of what they look to do moving forward, and we may not know tangibly what all of that looks like yet. But Mike Shildt was pushing for more in St. Louis. He's maybe going to get more in terms of resources with what he starts out with in San Diego, and has been with the organization for a couple of years, so players know him. I would imagine that he's earned the respect there in San Diego to be given this opportunity. Looking at some of the quotes from Mike Shildt in an article from MLB.com, he says, quote, "I love our group. It's a fantastic group of young men with clear talent. Ultimately, what we're here to do is win, and we're going to do it together as an organization." Man, it sure sounds like the same Mike Shildt that we know from a couple of years ago. I believe Mike Shildt to be a really dedicated man, a hardworking man, a good baseball man. He rides guys tough, right? And maybe there was an aspect of that too, where some of those interpersonal relationships in St. Louis were soured, and we're getting to a point where the Cardinals decided to go a different direction. Again, not trying to get into speculation or all the details of what may have gone down there, but my belief is that Mike Shildt, whether he was wronged or not in St. Louis, has had time to reflect upon what would I do differently and what would I do the same if I got another opportunity to manage. And now he's going to get that opportunity with a roster that I believe to be pretty talented. Again, it could go through some moving and shaking depending on what Preller has in mind for the team moving forward and what that ownership group has in mind for the team moving forward. But I do believe that Mike Shildt is going to be equipped with opportunity there that, whether he felt he had that in St. Louis or whether he felt he didn't, and maybe that was part of what brought the end about, right? Mike Shildt always talked about valuing the Cardinal way, and he was a George Kissel disciple, and I know a lot of old school Cardinals fans really gravitate toward that and appreciate that, and rightfully so. And that's probably what led to Mike Shildt feeling that he was comfortable in his job as a 3 years in a row winning manager, coming into a situation where he thought perhaps was a contract extension due, and felt he could push the envelope a little bit more than maybe the front office thought he could. And when you have that situation as a front office and you see Oli Marmol sitting there believing, hey, this guy could be the next, it would be a shame to miss out on him when we're not entirely sure about this other guy right now due to maybe some relational aspects, the philosophical differences, right, that were discussed. And it was very vague at the time and frustrating at the time. But you see little different things come out now that whether you're on Schildt's side or Mozeliak's side in that, it doesn't really make a difference. it boils down to the Cardinals needing to get it right in retrospect, and they end up with Oli Marmol. What's so interesting is they didn't have Skip Schumaker as a coach at that time. It wasn't until Marmol becomes the manager that they bring in Skip, and now he is clearly a guy with a big league pedigree as a manager, winning the Manager of the Year in his first season, right, in Miami. So those are all things that I think are swirling, and it's an angsty conversation for Cardinals fans because of the lack of success here. I maintain this, though. No matter who the manager is for the St. Louis Cardinals, you're going to be upset with that guy when the team loses 91 games. It doesn't matter. No manager has ever lost 91 games and looked really good at his job. But I think the Cardinals coming into 2024 with a roster that makes more sense, and hopefully that happens. It hasn't happened yet. They have not crossed the finish line on an offseason that allows that to play out. There's still a lot that needs to be done. And honestly, the hardest work is yet to come for John Mozeliak. It's the easy stuff, signing Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson, two back-of-the-end rotation types of guys that wanted to play in St. Louis. So there wasn't a lot of haggling over figuring out whether there was going to be a fit or not. You knew both of those guys wanted to be here, and so it was relatively easy. Can Mozeliak and his group make the move that's difficult? That's going to be necessary for the Cardinals to have the roster that I think can equip Oli Marmol for success. But Mike Shildt, I think he would be equipped for success just about anywhere as well, because I do believe in him as a manager, and that, again, anything that he may have looked back on over the last couple of years and thought, could I have operated a little bit differently and maybe not had some of the contentious relationships that potentially had developed in St. Louis? I feel like Mike Shildt is going to be better for the experience that he had in St. Louis, is going to be better as a manager for the time off and the time to kind of view it from a different role, but at the big league level, because again, he had spent a lot of years in the minors, had spent some time in the major leagues with the Cardinals, but now seeing things from a different side with the way that he went about his role in San Diego over the last couple of years. I think he's well equipped to be successful there in San Diego. But in your mind, Cardinals fans, does Mike Shildt being back in a managerial chair and having the opportunity to, whether it's fair or not, to the other managers in the league, to the manager in St. Louis, kind of visually pit these guys against one another? They're going to manage against one another. You'll see Oli Marmol against Skip Schumaker. You'll see Oli Marmol against Mike Shildt at some point this year, which is going to be really fascinating. How does that impact your view of what's going on in St. Louis? Does it impact anything at all? Are you still mad to see Mike Shildt gone? Which, again, I'm not really taking sides here because I believe in both Mike Shildt and Oli Marmol as managers, so I want to make that perfectly clear. But I get from a fandom standpoint that people are going to feel a certain way about these things. So are you happy to see Mike Shildt with the opportunity, or does it just make you long for, wishing he was maybe still the guy in St. Louis, which I can kind of understand both sides of that. Although people are going to get tired of me saying it, I still do believe in Oli Marmol, and if the Cardinals don't win this year, it is going to be very interesting for a manager that is coming into the final year of his contract. Cardinals have not given him an extension as of yet either, so it's going to be intriguing to kind of see the way that things play out as two former Cardinal managerial candidates, or two former Cardinal coaches at the very minimum, with Skip Schumaker and Mike Shildt managing in the East and West, respectively, in the National League. Let me know what you think, Cardinals fans, in the comments below on YouTube. And stay tuned to this YouTube channel. Subscribe for all sorts of Cardinals content this offseason as we head into 2024 as well. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time on the Brenden Schaeffer St. Louis Cardinals Writer YouTube channel. Peace.